Hi, dear friends. Good to be here with you all. We're talking about Parashat Shalah. This, of course, is the great parasha of miracles. We want to talk about miracles today. The whole parasha is given to two great miracles: the splitting of the Red Sea, the Reed Sea, and the descent of the manna, helping Israel survive in the wilderness. So we're told by our greater tradition that we have two kinds of miracles: revealed, obvious miracles like these, and something called hidden miracles, secret miracles, nisim nistarim. That category of the secret miracle was first talked about by Nachmanides in the 13th century, the first one to introduce mystical thinking into public discourse in Judaism. It was then picked up by the Maharal of Prague in the 16th century. He writes about it quite a bit. He has a whole theory of history around it. And then it was picked up, as some of you don't know, by Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, the great Hasidic master. My book on him has been out for a couple of years in English. It's just about to come out in Hebrew. So I know a lot about this because I've written on it. Uh, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak asked, "What is this about tzaddikim being able to perform miracles?" Of course, Hasidism came from the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov was indeed a miracle worker. He was a Baal Shem, and that's what Baalei Shem are. They are shamans who cure, who help people by a strange combination of magic names and herbs from the wilderness, and we don't know where, and strange advice they give, strange kinds of counsel, and people are helped and cured, and they are kind of miracles. And it was expected that that would pass on to the Hasidic masters, the disciples of the Baal Shem Tov. And there were indeed lots of miracle workers in early Hasidism, and there are lots of later stories, much later stories, about miracles people performed. But there were some, especially in the school of the Maggid of Mizrich, I would say the elite among his school. I'm thinking of Levi Yitzchak himself and his dear friend Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Ladi, the founder of Chabad, who said, no, we do not perform miracles. Yes, it's true that a tzaddik theoretically could, but that's beneath us. They were Talmidei Chachamim, they were sages, scholars, and to be a Baal Meifis, a kind of a wonder worker, was not exactly their kind of thing. So they stayed away. And what did Rabbi Levi Yitzchak say? Yes, it's possible for the tzaddik to perform miracles, of course, except that we happen to live in an age of hidden miracles, not revealed miracles. And so if somebody says, I'll perform a hidden miracle for you, it doesn't work that way. Because if it's a hidden miracle, you never know if he performed it. Yes, I'll pray for your sick child, but he also takes medicine, also goes to the doctor, and also takes care of himself physically, and who knows what cured him. You can call it a hidden miracle if you want to, but that's a matter of your gratitude or your faith. How about the daily wonders that are with us? Hanisim shebechol yomimanu that we say in our Siddur 3 times a day. Are they hidden miracles? Things we would never recognize as miracles, yet they are. The opening of our eyes in the morning, the sunrise, surviving plagues, surviving wars, surviving terrible things that happen among human beings. Not everyone survives, it's true, but those who do nevertheless talk about the miracle of my survival, the miracle of my being here. It feels like a miracle. Even if you're not a literal believer, it feels like a miracle. Now, Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev published only one book in his lifetime. It was a little book on Purim and Chanukah. He called it Kedushat Levi, but it's not the Kedushat Levi that we know on the Parsha. It's Kedushat Levi just on Purim and Chanukah. If you see an odd copy of the first edition, let me know. It's a very rare book. But there he begins the book by talking about the miracle of the giving of the Torah, which is not Purim or Hanukkah. He says this famous question. Israel at Sinai supposedly said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we'll do everything you say. Now tell us, now let us listen to hear what it is. They agreed in advance to accept the Torah. And at the same time, the Talmud says, God held the mountain over their heads and said, if you accept my Torah, fine. If not, plop. Here you will be buried under the mountain. Why did God need to do that if they'd already accepted it? And he hints, he doesn't quite say it, but I'm sure it's there in the hint, that the miracles of the Exodus from Egypt and the splitting of the Red Sea and the coming to Sinai were themselves like holding the mountain over their heads. How could you possibly not believe in an age like that? You'd lived through all of it. Open, revealed miracles. You saw the 10 plagues. You saw the seas split. You saw the Egyptians drowned. What else do you want? Of course you're going to believe in everything. Of course you're going to say Naaseh v'nishma. Sure, sure. For a God like you, for a God who does those things for us, how can we say no? That was the forcing of them to accept. They did not have the real freedom to choose because they were so overwhelmed by obvious miracles. And that's why the Talmud, in discussing it, comes back and says, Hadar kiblua b'yemei Achashverosh. They received the Torah anew, and it says kimu v'kiblu in the Megillah. It says they received the Torah anew in the days of Mordechai and Esther. Why? Because that was a time without revealed miracles. You remember the Esther narrative happens in a completely natural way. This causes that, that causes the next thing. Now, you may say the hand of God is there, but the hand of God is there in a completely hidden way. The figure of God does not appear in Megillat Esther. Therefore, they had to accept the Torah again in the time of Mordechai and Esther, and that's the Torah we need to accept. We need to accept a Torah that works in times when there are no miracles, when God isn't pulling us out of every difficulty we have, and to still have faith, to still say, yes, of course, the hand of God is there in everything, because everything is filled with divine presence. That's what we need to see. So we live in a time without miracles. We need a Torah that works in a time without miracles. But I want to add a little something else. Why don't we have miracles in our time? I want to tell you a little story. In Pirkei Avot, the end of Pirkei Avot, there's a listing of things God created on Friday afternoon, just before the sun was setting. You know, on Friday, God created the animals, and it was pretty good. God said, this is good. And then he said, you know what? There's something missing. Naaseh Adam, let's make human beings in our image, after our likeness, and give them rule over the animal kingdom and so on. But as soon as he created human beings, you know what happened? God saw history unfold before him. With animals, there was no history. They just ate and reproduced and died, ate and reproduced and died with no memory. But human beings suddenly had history, and God says, oi, they're going to get in trouble. And he starts creating things furiously. Noah's rainbow, Abraham's ram, the mouth of Bilam's donkey, things that will be needed, Moses' staff, all those things needed for miracles. So why do we have no miracles in our day? It's easy. Shabbos came, the sun set. God had to decide, I could go on creating miracles to save them from everything that's going to happen in history. But then there'd be no Shabbos. So he gave us the one miracle of being able to get off the treadmill every week and stop and rest and search for a holier life. Menucha ukdusha, the rest that allows for holiness. That was the one great miracle God gave us instead of all the rest. We live in a time of hidden miracles. Go look for one. Shabbat Shalom.